Now it's time for America to bind the wounds of division. Have to get together.
Binding the wounds of division. I played that as a segue to our next topic this afternoon because we could do Donald Trump for the next 6 hours, but we've had so many voices on, and I want to get Dr. Kyla Dillard on, too. I did the interview a little earlier this afternoon. But anyway, I want to take a break from all of that for just a moment because we have a very interesting guest in studio this afternoon. We're going to talk about a topic that it rips my guts out, to be really blunt, and that is when you have friends who are going through a divorce, or heaven forbid, even worse, if you're going through one yourself. It's hell on so many levels. And I've invited Elizabeth Goldenberg to join me in studio this afternoon because she is in this business of helping couples through this hellish period of their lives. So, Elizabeth, appreciate you coming in this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you're offering a new service, and you got a seminar tomorrow night that we'll get to. But let's talk about divorce. I don't know if they have done surveys on what is the worst experience in your life. I suppose losing a child would have to be probably number one. There are lots of things that are horrible. How high does divorce rank?
Divorce is very high. I think the top stressor in the sort of stress scales they have is the death of a spouse, but separation is right up there.
And this is what you do?
This is what I do. I've been a solo divorce lawyer, family law lawyer in London for 23 years.
How many divorces have you been involved in negotiating?
I have done almost 1,000.
1,000?
1,000.
Doesn't your mother say to you, Elizabeth, there are lots of happier jobs out there. Why don't you get a happy job?
My mother would say the opposite. Honestly, we're all built for something, and I seem to be built for this type of work. I just have some perspectives about the subject. I'm a child of divorce. My parents separated and divorced when I was young, and I always felt that I could bring something to the table in terms of being humane about it, being practical about it. And I think I've made an impact in the lives of the people that I have represented by making it as gentle a process, as supportive a process as I can.
You won't like me for what I'm about to say, because I have a number of friends, guys, and I'm harder on the guys than the women, who walk away from a marriage for ridiculous reasons. And I'm saying, if you really love your kids, fix your damn marriage. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty blunt and uncaring attitude, isn't it?
Well, those conversations happen long before people would come to my office. I'm always very interested and intrigued by people's decision-making processes and how much they put in to making the decision of whether or not they should separate.
By the time they get to you don't get into counseling so much. You just accept the fact that they've decided on a divorce and you help them jump through the hoops.
Absolutely. We help make decisions about practical decisions and also personal decisions. How am I going to handle this? How humanely am I going to be treating the other side? What can I do to expedite? How can I keep the best interest of the children first and foremost in my mind? So separations are going to happen. When they study, there's a book called Committed by Elizabeth Gilbert, and she was looking at the subject of marriage, which led to the subject of separation. And in his records, as far back as you can go, there are separations. In natural populations, like seagulls have been studied, they mate for life, but 25% of the time, the first mate they pick is incorrect for them, and they're squabbling, they're fighting over resources. Their chicks don't thrive. Then they repick, and they do mate for life. So I guess,
My wife and I like to walk the pier at Port Stanley. I'm going to walk there with a whole new perspective. You say seagulls mate for life, and if they squabble, then it hurts their chicks?
If sometimes the couple is too competitive, or just not a peaceful couple, and they will actually separate, repick, and then they are successfully able to mate for life. So what I'm trying to say is, from my perspective, I accept that separations will occur. I respect my client's decision-making process, and then I'm just there to do no harm. and help people through with ease and grace.
I always found it fascinating that after 9/11, the divorce rate in the U.S. for a certain period dropped off dramatically, and a lot of couples called their lawyers and canceled their plans to get divorced.
Well, that would be an extreme situation, wouldn't it, where you'd sit back and say, oh my gosh, that was a close call. And certainly you might reassess. It's a very personal decision, and it's on it. Like I said, it's made well before people ring me.
Let me ask you about another phrase that we hear about marriage. It takes two to tango. Because I have seen marriages destroyed by an idiot, singular, where one person is reasonable, at least from my perspective, and I suppose we shouldn't get involved in friends' divorces, but there's one person who's just an idiot.
I have an opinion about that, too, because I always say to people, they come in, they're shocked and they're critical, and I always say you're better off today now that this event, this idiocy or whatever it is, this betrayal has happened and you know about it. Now that you know, you can make decisions about whether or not you want to carry the rest of your life beside this person. When you didn't know, you were in the dark, and you might have been fully committed to someone who wasn't committed to you. Isn't it better to have it on the table and then decide how to behave? And just because you separate does not mean you have to despise the other party. I always say to people, you trusted this person with your life. You know, you thought this would be a suitable parent for your children. You trusted the person with your children's lives. You picked each other probably for a reasonable reason at the time. You're a sensible person. Now that we're separating, let's keep all that in mind and be humane and be practical and try to emerge from this emotionally intact, financially intact. And I have found a way to do that through my personal practice and now through the New Family Law Center.
It's a very personal issue for Londoners because we have a mayor who had an affair with the deputy mayor, and we got two marriages being cashed in. So it's an ugly, ugly issue. I have a friend who right now is going through a divorce, extremely costly, extremely emotional, because one person is just being difficult. That's their approach to the problem. She's rejected me, so I'm just going to be as miserable and cause as much grief as I possibly can. We're obviously touching a nerve. Here's a text message, Andy. Divorce is hurtful, but parents need to think of their kids. My ex and I always put the kids first, and they are grown now. I'll never forget showing up at the courthouse together, and the person and the wicket was shocked we were there both together smiling.
That's absolutely wonderful. And I'm constantly amazed by people who, will really say, we have to put our children first. Here's the best way to parent them from their perspective, from the children's point of view. It's wonderful when people can do that. It's difficult to control the process of separation when each party has a separate lawyer. And that's probably what you're describing with your friend. There's no coordination between the two law firms. You might have lawyers that don't like each other, might have completely different agendas. Everyone's kind of in the dark about what's supposed to happen and when.
Tammy Wynette, the famous song Divorce becomes final today. We have a lawyer in studio this afternoon. If you're just joining us, Elizabeth Goldenberg is a London lawyer who's been doing divorces for 23 years. 1,000. Unbelievable, the pain and suffering she has seen, and she thinks there's a better way. So, Elizabeth, what's the better way?
Well, I realized that no matter how I did things as an individual lawyer representing one spouse, right? If I did things kindly, if I did things affordably, if I tried to expedite, I couldn't control the whole process because I wasn't involved in what was happening on the other side with the other lawyer. So my better way is this New Family Law Center that I opened. It's a corporation, a service company. It's not a law firm. And what I do, what I've organized there, is that both parties, the person who texted who said, look at us, we came up with a reasonable solution, we went through this together. People like that can come to this New Family Law Center. And I have lawyers on a panel who have signed memorandums of understanding that they're going to have a very civilized code of conduct with each other. We do everything on a 16-week timeline, which is extremely short to get people through this. Everything's done through a flat fee. There's just one payment. You don't have to worry about being charged hourly and can I call my lawyer, is it worth it? And there's wellness programming that I had a psychologist make on stress reduction, and it's provided to both spouses as part of the plan. And it's a safe place to go to get through this thing and do no harm, and know that every step that's being taken is being taken to resolve your case. No one's going to threaten you with court. You're going to be fully informed by your lawyers. Everything's going to be on the table and accounted for. And everything that we can settle, we document in an agreement in those 16 weeks.
But that would require a couple to agree on something, doesn't it? But in divorce, the tendency is for each person to run to their own lawyer and to plan their own strategy without cooperating with the other person.
Well, it doesn't. So the sooner people come into the center, the better, obviously, because people upon separation are thinking, how do I fix this? What do I do? And that's why I'm going to be talking about separation literacy. We'll talk about that. But it doesn't have to go that way. I think everybody wants to get through things just knowing they're going to be okay. Their kids are going to be okay. And get a little advice and instruction, and that's what their own lawyers provide them with.
You're a child of divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Did that influence your decision to go into this area?
Absolutely. I just thought, I needed to know from the inside what it's all about. And I'm really glad. I've been a divorce lawyer for 23 years, and I litigated, and I did the whole thing. And then I began to experiment with softer ways, more gentle ways to get things done. But until I came up with a new family law center where I can get both spouses on the same track, because it's not a law firm, it's a service company, and I'm not personally providing the services, there's no conflict of interest. That's when the change happened. And it's wonderful to be able to provide that for people. And I have to say, Andy, even in the most difficult cases, the ones that have gone off track, they're not on these parallel tracks like I'm talking about, it's always possible to settle something. I met a woman who told me that it had been 7 years and she finally got custody resolved. Custody was never being challenged. The kids lived with her, saw their dad on a schedule. No one had thought about putting those terms into an agreement, so it could just be moved to the side and be off everybody's mind. There's always something you can get done amicably. So in my process, you're fully informed. All of the numbers are on the table. You have your own lawyer. The lawyers are typically, like family law can actually be sort of standardized in some way. Some of the rules are very easy to apply once you know income levels, assets, debts. There's discrepancies in different people's perspectives and what they'd prefer to see.
So what's your number one goal through this process?
Well, I just wanted to be able to offer something new that doesn't exist. Up to now, people have either seen a regular type of lawyer, which is nothing. There are wonderful family law lawyers in town. I have great respect for the system. Increasingly, though, people are bypassing that. They're representing themselves, and they're starting court claims on their own behalf.
Going into court, divorce court, without a lawyer.
We have up to 70% of cases with one or more self-represented party, and they're not having a good time. Mediation is another option, and now there's the new family law center where you actually have your lawyer, but the whole process is very predictable, very peaceful, and it is leading towards a separation agreement that will be documented in the end. I wanted to be creative and make something new, and because I have the wellness programming, I think it sends a message to people. This is a softer spot to land,
Let me ask you a question. Please don't take offense. You said you've been involved in 1,000 divorce cases. How many of those cases did you think there's some hope for this marriage? Why don't I hook these people up with a marriage counselor?
That would come up in almost every initial consultation. And again, I'm really often awed by the power and the complexity of people's decision making and how many years it took to reach the decision, and what was the final step or whatever that made them know this is what I need to do now. But we'll ask if people have had counseling, and also most people will say that's occurred already. One thing I bring up with people is separation counseling, which I find very helpful. People have to learn a new way of talking to each other. You know, maybe they don't want to provoke each other. Maybe there's some things that they want to say that they just haven't been able to say. And a few sessions with a psychologist or social worker on the topic of separation going forward can be extremely helpful. I did see some reconciliations, but probably 98% of the time people were really sure about what they were doing.
In how many cases did you talk to couples where one of them lives upstairs and one lives downstairs?
It happens a lot. That does happen a lot. And people will say, well, that's been going on for a year. You know, we've been separate under the same roof, perhaps. Now we want to take the steps necessary to disentangle our finances, figure out how we're going to parent the kids from different homes. We certainly do get that.
My own theory is that the damage done to kids from a broken family is often devastating. And that's why I'm a little harsh and say, if you really love your kids, you'd fix your damn marriage. And I know that's brutal and it's harsh, but especially in some individual cases that I've been involved with, I just thought they're walking away because life wasn't perfect, and I'm so sorry, but life isn't perfect. Anyway, I'm turning into a marriage counselor, which I don't mean to do. You have a seminar tomorrow night.
I do have a seminar. It's on separation literacy, and I wanted to be able to speak very generally to everybody about the basic issues at separation and the choices that you have to make, because just like people know with first aid, you know, you cut yourself and you make a quick decision, do I put a Band-Aid on it or should I call an ambulance? People don't have that knowledge when it comes to separation. And everybody knows somebody who's going to go through separation and will want your advice, need your support. So I thought, wouldn't it be great to just contribute to the literacy related to separation? So I have a free talk. It's at Westmount Library tomorrow night. 6:45, should be about an hour, and people are welcome to call up to register. It's 519-660-6352, and we still have some spaces open. I'm going to try to do these a few times a year, and the uptake for it's been really interesting. People are calling and saying, our son's going through separation. We want to come and just make sure, you know, we understand what's going on, that type of thing. And then I'm getting people who have been separated for many, many years, haven't taken any steps, just want to know what their choices are. And I just think it's good general knowledge.
Terrific. 660-6352 is the phone number?
Correct.
519 is the prefix. Elizabeth Goldenberg, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Andy.